Imagine, imagine spending thousands of dollars, right? You fly across the globe. You dedicate literally years of your life to sit at the feet of this legendary spiritual master.
Oh, yeah. The classic pilgrimage.
Exactly. So you finally arrive, you sit down in this room full of all these other fellow seekers, and you lean in, to receive the ultimate secret to inner peace, only for him to look right at you and give you this like 2-word instruction. He just says, keep quiet.
Wow. I mean, it is a brilliantly subversive moment.
It really is.
Because it strikes right at the core of this deep cultural conditioning we all have. We are so wired to believe that anything valuable, whether it's, financial success, physical fitness, or even like profound spiritual enlightenment, we think it requires immense, agonizing effort.
Right, like we have to hustle for it.
Exactly. We assume we have to sweat. We have to earn it.
Well, today's deep dive is going to pretty much challenge that assumption entirely. For you listening today, we are unpacking something really fascinating. We're looking at a transcript from a video uploaded by the Leela School of Awakening.
Yeah, it features the teachings of Papaji.
Right. And the title of this session really just lays out the whole thesis for us. It's called Papaji. It's so simple.
Simple, though, rarely means easy to accept.
Oh, for sure.
And the context of this text is really crucial to keep in mind. These people traveling from all over the world, they are attending what's called a satsang.
Which is basically sitting in the presence of a teacher.
Right, exactly. They view him as this master, yet his primary directive to them isn't, it's not some 10-step meditation practice. It's not a complex mantra to memorize. It is simply this call for profound internal quietness.
Right, which means he's not just telling people to, stop chatting in the room.
No.
He's talking about silencing a very specific, relentless internal machinery that we all have. And to understand what Papaji really means by keeping quiet, we first have to look at what is constantly generating all the noise in our heads.
Which is such a big question.
Yeah. And the text points directly at our absolute, total obsession with time.
Yeah, time is the big one here. Papaji basically argues that the human mind is, well, it's essentially tethered to this destructive chronometer.
Wow. Okay.
And he uses this incredibly stark metaphor for the mind that dwells in the past. He calls it a graveyard.
A graveyard. I mean, calling your own memories a graveyard that's a heavy way to reframe how we think about our personal histories.
It really is.
Because think about it. From the time we're kids, we are taught that learning from the past, to prepare for the future, that's just responsible living.
Right. You build a resume.
Exactly. You build a resume of past experiences to secure some future identity. The analogy that really comes to mind for me here is it's like our brains operate like a smartphone that's just endlessly doom scrolling through old, corrupted data files.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like we pull up yesterday's argument or, I don't know, a mistake from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we just hit play. And it plays on a loop.
Yeah, we obsess over it.
But the natural defense mechanism for anyone listening is probably to say, wait, isn't our history who we are? Doesn't the past actually matter?
Sure, and Papaji dismantles that defense by pointing out the mechanical futility of it.
Okay, how so?
Think about the logic of a graveyard, right? What can you actually extract from a graveyard?
Nothing. Just dead things.
Exactly. The past is gone. It's dead. So when you mentally revisit a regret or, like you said, an old argument, you are essentially trying to extract life from a corpse.
Oh, wow.
It takes a massive amount of your current, vital, right now energy to animate something that is already fundamentally dead.
That makes a lot of sense.
The text argues that whatever you touch or imagine in that space, it has no life. And then, on the flip side, the future is equally hollow.
Because it hasn't happened yet.
Right. It's completely unknown. It's an unwritten script.
Okay, so if the past is dead and the future is essentially just a ghost, that leaves us with the present. But reading through this transcript, Papaji doesn't even let the present off the hook.
No, he really doesn't.
Why is that?
Because the present is constantly collapsing. He describes the present as something that is slowly, continuously moving into the past.
Like it's slipping away.
Yeah, like sinking sand. Even the beginning of the sentence, I'm speaking to you right now, it's already gone.
Right. It's already the past.
Exactly. So if you cling to the present moment as a concept, as a thing to hold on to, you're just clinging to something that immediately becomes the past. You are, in his exact words, giving into the past.
Which means if you are constantly living in that graveyard of yesterday or desperately trying to script an unpredictable tomorrow, true happiness is It's structurally impossible within that framework.
Structurally impossible, yes.
And so Popji gives this super blunt instruction. Don't touch time and space.
Which don't touch it at all.
Because tethering yourself to time means tethering yourself to a cycle of constant, inevitable loss.
And that forces a massive realization about our daily stress, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
We tend to think our anxiety comes from external events. You know, like, oh, I got a bad email from my boss, or I missed my train and that's why I'm stressed.
Right, we blame the event.
But the text suggests that the anxiety actually stems from the simple, foundational act of touching time itself.
So for you listening right now, I really want you to evaluate your own mental energy today, just based on this one concept.
Yeah, it's a good exercise.
Think about it. How much of your psychological bandwidth today has been spent wandering around in the graveyard of what happened yesterday? Or stressing out about the ghost of what might happen tomorrow?
Probably a lot of it.
Probably most of it, honestly. And if time and space are the very mechanisms of our suffering, it raises this really critical question. Where did this chronological prison even come from? Like, how did we get trapped in it?
And this is where things get really wild. According to Papaji's teachings, we didn't just, get dropped into this trap by accident.
We built it.
We are the architects of it. He states flat out that time, space, the universe, the sun, the moon, the stars, all of it is entirely our own projection.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on the physics of this for a second.
I figured you might.
Because, look, it makes total psychological sense to say my anxiety about an upcoming work presentation is a mental projection.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm inventing a scenario in my head that hasn't happened.
Sure.
But the literal sun and the moon, how can he claim that physical reality is just my mind projecting things?
It's a big leap.
Right. If I fall asleep on a park bench, the sun is still shining on the person sitting next to me. So how does this framework bridge the gap between my subjective perception inside my head and actual objective physical reality out there?
Well, in Papaji's framework, there is no bridge.
What do you mean?
Because he entirely rejects the premise of an independent, objective reality outside the perceiver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he takes it all the way. The person sitting next to you on the park bench, the bench itself, the sun shining on, they are all contained within your field of perception.
That is a radical pivot into non-dualism.
Completely. And to prove this, he actually asks the listener to examine a really everyday, universally experienced phenomenon.
Which is?
Deep sleep.
Okay, deep sleep.
Yeah. Think about a midday nap where you fall into a completely dreamless state.
Yeah.
During that specific window of deep sleep, where is the world?
Nowhere.
Where is the sun? Where are your complex relationships?
I mean, from the perspective of my direct experience in that specific moment, they literally cease to exist. The entire simulation just shuts down.
They vanish entirely. But, crucially, and this is the core of his argument, you do not cease to exist.
Right. I'm still there.
The fundamental awareness remains, even without the objects of the world to perceive. And Papaji highlights how deeply we actually crave this state.
We love sleep.
We love it. We happily say goodnight to our favorite person in the room. We eagerly leave our families, our jobs, our very identities behind just so we can rest alone.
That completely flips the script on how we view sleep. Like, we aren't just resting our tired bodies.
No, it's deeper than that.
We are seeking relief from the exhausting labor of projecting a universe all day. It's honestly like wearing a highly immersive, incredibly heavy VR headset.
That's a perfect analogy.
And deep sleep is literally the only time we allow ourselves to take the headset off and just put it on the desk.
Yes. And then think about what happens the moment the alarm goes off.
The headset goes back on.
Instantly. Papaji traces the mechanics of waking up step by step. In the very first instant of the waking state, the mind boots up. But he asks, what is the mind? He defines it simply as a collection of thoughts. And the root of all thought, the foundational anchor of the whole system, is the I thought.
The I.
Right. The moment that I asserts itself upon waking, it requires a world to interact with, so it instantaneously reprojects the entire universe.
Wow. It is really fascinating to think about the I thought as like a power button for reality.
It's exactly like a power button.
Because you can't have a worry about the future without an I who is going to experience that future.
Right.
And you can't have regret without an I who made a mistake in the past. So the second that I boots up in the morning, it immediately loads in the sun, the moon, the stress, the graveyard of time, just all at once.
Boom. It's all there. Which leads to a really startling conclusion. The world isn't doing anything to you.
Right, because I'm doing it to myself.
Exactly. In this philosophical model, your mind is projecting a world and then reacting with fear or desire to its own projection.
So if my mind is projecting all these stressful illusions,
Mm.
right, and I'm utterly exhausted by it, my immediate instinct as a modern person is to go find an expert.
Naturally.
I want to find a teacher or read a book or adopt a new morning routine to help me turn the projection off. So what is Papaji's method for shutting down the VR headset while we are awake?
And here is perhaps the most challenging part of the text.
Okay, lay it on me.
He insists there are no
No
methods.
methods at all.
None. Methods are a trap.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Think about it. If I projecting the universe is an illusion, then any spiritual journey undertaken by that I is just another illusion.
Ah, I see.
Papaji explicitly warns against the concept of sadhanas, which means spiritual practices, and he tells his audience to abandon the goal of achieving enlightenment.
But look at the massive paradox happening in the
Oh,
room.
it's huge.
We established at the start that he is speaking to an audience of dedicated spiritual seekers, people who flew across the world. They are sitting in his presence. Yet he's sitting in front of them saying, do nothing, change nothing, I am not your teacher.
Yeah.
It feels incredibly antagonistic to the entire self-improvement industry.
It is entirely antagonistic to it, and he explains the psychology behind why we seek teachers in the first place.
Okay, why do we?
Well, in the conventional world, we're bound by social relationships, right? Someone is a parent, someone is a boss, a spouse.
Sure, we all have those roles.
And when people become exhausted by the friction of those worldly relationships, they turn to spirituality for an escape.
Like an out.
Right. But instead of actually finding freedom, they just replicate the exact same dynamic. They create a spiritual relationship.
Oh, wow. So we just swap out a corporate ladder for a spiritual ladder.
Exactly.
Instead of trying to please a boss to get a promotion, we try to please a guru to get enlightenment.
You nailed it. But you're still climbing.
We're still striving.
You're still trapped in time, hoping for a future payoff. And worse, you're still looking for someone else to take responsibility for your freedom.
That is so true.
That is exactly why Papaji refuses the label of a teacher who gives homework. He states clearly that if he gives you a practice or tells you to change your habits or gives you a new belief system, he is just binding you to a new illusion.
So what does he say instead?
His instruction is shockingly hands-off. He just says, stay as you are.
Stay as you are. Telling a room full of people desperate for change to stay as they are, that forces a complete redefinition of why they're even in the room.
Absolutely.
Because if satsang isn't about sitting at the feet of a master and receiving some cosmic to-do list, what does the text claim true satsang actually is?
Well, he strips the word of all its communal, hierarchical baggage. He defines satsang simply as association with your own true nature.
Not with a person.
Right. It's not about going to a physical location or seeing a specific guru. He reminds the listeners of a really stark reality. You came into this existence alone from an unknown place, and you will leave it alone.
That's intense.
He asks, will your spiritual teacher go with you when you die? Will your family? Will your own body or your intellect? No. You depart alone.
Wow.
Therefore, true satsang is resting in that solitary truth right now. There is no external method to apply and absolutely nothing to undo.
You know, the psychological relief of that is immense. But I have to admit, it also carries a kind of terror.
Oh, definitely. The ego hates it.
Because if we drop all our methods, throw out the self-improvement books,
Yeah.
abandon the idea of a spiritual journey entirely, we're left completely naked with our own anxious minds.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
So how does Papaji suggest we actually experience this freedom if we aren't allowed to practice getting better?
He addresses that exact fear with a brilliant analogy. It really exposes why our attempts to fix ourselves are so misguided.
I love his analogies. What is it?
He describes a terrified child standing in an empty room. The child is pointing at a dark corner and screaming that there is a ghost.
But the room is completely empty.
The room is completely empty. But to the child, the ghost is absolutely real. The biological terror, the heart racing, the sweat that is all real.
Right, the physical response is happening.
Yes. Yet, the source of that terror is a complete illusion. projected by the child's own mind.
That perfectly maps onto how we experience daily anxiety.
Oh, so.
We project these ghosts into the room all the time, like the fear of failing an impending project, or the fear of what a colleague thinks of us, or the dread of some future economic collapse.
Yes, ghosts everywhere.
And then we spend massive amounts of energy trying to fight, outsmart, or, meditate away the ghost.
Exactly. And Papaji's fundamental question is, how do you remove a ghost that isn't there?
You can't.
You cannot fight an illusion. Any energy you spend fighting it just makes it feel more real.
Because you're validating it.
Right. The only solution is to recognize that the ghost is your own projection. The instant you see the mechanism of the illusion, the fear evaporates on its own.
It's like standing in a room with your arms raised, your muscles trembling, completely exhausting yourself because you believe you're holding up a heavy ceiling.
Oh, I like that.
Right. You're sweating, your heart is racing, you're looking for a structural engineer to help you bear the load, and then someone walks in and points out that the ceiling is structurally sound.
It's holding itself up.
Exactly. You don't need to slowly lower your arms over 5 years. You don't need a 6-week physical therapy program to release your muscles. You just drop your arms. The relief doesn't take time. It's immediate.
That analogy captures the exact mechanism he's pointing toward perfectly, which brings up the most pragmatic question for anyone trying to understand this.
Which is the timeline, right?
Exactly. What is the timeline? If freedom doesn't require decades of meditation, how long does it take to drop your arms?
Right. If there is no journey, what is the speed of this realization?
Well, Papaji references the mystic poet Kabir and other spiritual traditions, stating that this realization takes half of this instant, half of this instant.
Half of an instant, so a
Yeah.
quarter of a moment. A fraction of a second so small it almost evades measurement.
Exactly. For just that microscopic window of time, his instruction is to sever all connections. For a quarter of an instant, do not relate yourself to any person, to any physical object, or to any concept.
Don't touch the graveyard of the past.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch the ghost of the future.
Right. Do not even touch the I thought.
You just let the arms drop completely.
Let them drop. And he emphasizes how heavily skewed the risk-to-reward ratio is here.
What do you mean?
He points out that for this 1/4 of an instant, you risk losing absolutely nothing. If you find the silence unbearable, you can always pick your anxieties, your identity, and your past right back up a second later.
Oh, that's hilarious. Like, don't worry, your stress will still be there.
It will be waiting for you. But the gain. He admits that even he cannot articulate the magnitude of what you gain from this fraction of a second. The freedom experienced in that tiny gap is completely beyond conceptual imagination.
To help bridge that gap between conceptual understanding and actual experience, he offers a really beautiful piece of guidance toward the end of the transcript.
The undressing part.
Yes, he tells the audience not to just passively hear the word quietness, but to literally undress the word.
Undress the word and see. It is a profound instruction on how to bypass the intellect.
Let's actually try to expand on that mechanism so you listening can see how it actually works in practice.
Let's do it.
Take a word that plagues most of us. Anxiety.
Good one.
If you feel anxious, your mind immediately builds a story around that word. You say, I have anxiety because my boss sent me a vague email.
Right, the narrative.
But Papaji is saying, undress the word. Strip away the storyline about the boss. What is left? Just the label anxiety.
Okay.
Now peel back the label. Stop calling it anxiety. What is actually happening?
Well, when you remove the conceptual label, you are usually just left with pure physical sensation,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Like a tightness in the chest, maybe a fluttering in the stomach, or a shallow breath.
Yes. You are just observing sensation. Now, undress it even further. Remove the concept of a chest or a stomach. Remove the whole idea of me experiencing a sensation. Go to the absolute root, the fountain where the phenomenon originates, before language even gets involved.
Wow.
If you keep stripping away the labels, the concept of anxiety dissolves entirely. You realize you were basically fighting a ghost made of vocabulary.
A ghost made of vocabulary. That is brilliant.
And you don't need the word quietness either, because once you undress all the noise, you are simply resting in the reality of silence.
It is the ultimate reductionist philosophy. You start with a universe full of planets, complex relationships, and seemingly insurmountable problems.
All right.
You trace it down to a single mind, projecting it all. Then you trace the mind down to a single I thought. You trace the I thought down to a single word. And finally, you undress that word until absolutely nothing remains but an eternal resting place.
No effort required.
Zero effort. No time traversing the past or future. No space to cross.
Stepping back, we have explored a genuinely paradigm-shifting set of arguments today.
We really have.
We started by examining Opapaji's assertion that our conventional relationship with time is actually an engine of suffering, a graveyard of dead pasts, and a fantasy of unwritten futures.
And then we unpack the radical non-dual claim that our entire physical reality and all the stress within it is just a subjective projection that the mind boots up every single time it emerges from deep sleep.
Right. We look at the paradox of the spiritual journey, seeing how the text frames our desperate search for teachers and methods as just another illusion. It's equivalent to fighting a projected ghost in an empty room, rather than just recognizing the ghost isn't real.
And finally, we explored the concept that ultimate freedom isn't a destination at the end of a grueling path. It's a state of being available in a quarter of an instant, accessed simply by dropping our conceptual frameworks and resting in our own unadorned nature.
It is a lot to process, ironically, because it demands that we do absolutely nothing.
It's the hardest thing to do.
It really is. It conflicts with every biological and cultural instinct we have to hustle, optimize, and, fight our way to a better state of mind. But there is an undeniable, immense relief in entertaining the idea that the heavy ceiling we've been straining to hold up is entirely self-supporting.
Which brings us to a final thought, a way for you to test these mechanics in the laboratory of your own life.
I love a good practical takeaway.
We discussed how, according to the text, the mind reprojects the entire universe in the very first instant of waking up from sleep.
The exact moment the power button is pressed.
Right. So here's a challenge for you to consider. Tomorrow morning, when you first open your eyes, before the graveyard of yesterday's regrets has a chance to load, before the ghosts of your daily to-do list materialize in the room, can you catch that half of an instant?
Just a quarter of a moment of zero effort.
Exactly. Can you notice that exact microscopic fraction of a second before the I thought rebuilds the world, before you strap that heavy VR headset back on? Yeah. And in that tiny space, can you just let yourself rest in that perfect, unadorned quietness?
I think exploring that tiny gap might just be the most profound thing we don't do all day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Keep questioning the noise, keep addressing the concepts, and most importantly, enjoy the quiet.